Let's go to East Rutherford, New Jersey, and welcome in Kim Jones, who's been covering the Giants for us all week. And Kim, he mentions the receiving core, some young receivers. Is there pressure to keep these guys up?
There is, Amber, and Eli Manning right there was talking about anticipating Friday night when he'll likely see a little bit of play against the Miami Dolphins here at MetLife Stadium. But what he could also have been talking about was the offense today in practice. On Saturday, the defensive backs got the better of those receivers. Today, led by that guy with the blonde hair, the New York Giants receivers did some damage. Eli Manning connected with Odell Beckham Jr. twice in a 2-minute drill and then twice in the red zone. The red zone catches were pretty. He beat Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie out of the slot. On another one, he used those go-go gadget arms of his to reach between Landon Collins and Janoris Jenkins, who had good coverage. So for Eli Manning today, a very good day when he is finding Beckham. But this is a very young receiver core. 9 of the 12 receivers on the roster are very, very green, including 4 rookies. One of those rookies we've talked about a lot in Sterling Shepard, but Eli Manning knows he not only has to help them learn the offense, and he said importantly today he does remember what it was like 2 years ago when he was learning Ben McAdoo's offense. He can empathize with these rookies and young players making mistakes. But Eli also says he knows he has to play well for this team to win. I take responsibility for this team. I demand that out of myself. I've got to play well. This is every bit the leader, Eli Manning, when he takes a step in this building, at this facility, and certainly on this field, Amber.
So you say the defensive backs getting the better of the receivers out there at practice was one of them. The other Eli Apple, their first-round draft pick out of Ohio State. How's he doing?
It was on Saturday, Amber. I'll tell you what, Eli Apple had his best practice of training camp on Saturday. The DBs as a whole had a very good practice on Saturday. Eli Apple telling us today he is getting more comfortable. He looks less grabby. And by that, I mean less prone to penalties that you're going to get in this league when you clutch and grab. He said, not surprisingly, that one of the ways he's improving is by going against Odell Beckham Jr. And he has faced Beckham an awful lot in this camp. Apple says that Beckham has told him what receivers look for. He's taught me how to read routes better, Apple said. And he's also helped with the top of the route technique. And then there's the psychological part, because on Saturday, Odell Beckham had his arm around Eli Apple as they walked to another practice field. And Apple told us today that Beckham's message is trust my talent, get my head around, and that I can play in this league. He says of Beckham, he's a little guy, but he's really savvy at using your force against you. So for Eli Apple, I guess may the force be with him, Amber, as he tries to take on these very talented receivers in the National Football League.
Kim, there's obviously a lot of high expectations for Eli Apple, but what about JPP? You know, we don't get to watch a lot of practice here in studio. You're there every day. I've heard that the teammates praising him about how dominant he looks and how he's back. Can you second that motion that he does look, you know, like he's back pre-hand injury?
Well, he looks ridiculous when it comes to the shape he's in, Heath. He told me he's 270 pounds. He looks leaner by far than I've ever seen him. He loses a few pounds at practice, but right around 270 when he weighs in the morning, which you get the feeling that's exactly where he wants to be. You know, he said something the other day that you almost chuckle at, and it is his reality. He said his right hand feels like his left hand, but missing a few fingers. And Jason Pierre-Paul has very much accepted his injury. He has trained as hard as he ever has, and you can see him and believe that. And he's really taken a leadership role. I could go on and on, Heath, about the times I've seen him pull a young player aside, but I have an example from today's practice. When Landon Collins, it appeared to me, was asking Jason about what went wrong on a play, and Jason spent minutes while the second team defense was on the field counseling Landon Collins, who was hanging on every single word. There is no doubt, while I talk about Eli Manning leading this offense and this team, there is no doubt that Jason Pierre-Paul has the ear of every one of his teammates, especially on defense.
All right, so some leadership on that defense that finished last in the NFL last year.
Yes.
Kim Jones reporting live from the Giants. Thanks so much, Kim. And of course,